Well, we all know what it's like to go into a Sunday service hoping that things go well and that there are not awkward transitions or things fall through the cracks. And so today on Practical Church Planting, we're going to help you avoid that feeling and by giving you 7 practical things you can do for smoother Sunday services.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Practical Church Planting. My name is Brian Androsi, and joining me today is Dylan Dodson. And today we're going to give you 7 tips for smoother Sunday services.
So this is about making your Sunday worship gathering
Smoother. Yes.
Always caveat, it's not like smoother is more holy or it's best or like it's more spiritual, but generally speaking, the less distractions and the smoother the service can go, the more engaging it is, the more people, just disengage. Like it's just not good when it's not as in an ideal world, we all would want a service that would go perfectly smooth. Yeah. And when it doesn't go smooth, it's not like a lack of a faith thing, but like there are a lot of things after going to a lot of churches that are easily, like there's one thing if something goes wrong that you couldn't control, whatever. It's another thing when things go wrong that are easily fixable and could help people connect better to what's going on and connect God better. And so today we want to give you 7 tips that you can do to make your services run smoother.
And if we're being honest, this will just, if you know that services are going to be smoother, it's just less stress on you. Oh, yeah. Because it's just less you got to think about, less you have to worry about things going wrong. So this will help your congregation, but it'll help you as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you're like every weekend going into Sunday thinking, oh, here are all the things I'm like not sure how it's going to go. Yeah, it goes back to last week where we talked about the level of your gosh, I'm butchering the quote now.
I cannot remember.
The level of your goals.
You rise to the level of your goals.
You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems.
Oh, the opposite of what I said.
Yes. So you may want a good service, but if you don't have the systems in place to run a smooth service, then you're going to have a lot of problems.
Yes.
So here are 7 things that you can practically do to make them go a little bit smoother. Number 1, a service run through. And by that, we mean like a full service run through. Now way back, time machine.
Yeah, the Wayback Machine.
Number 30, we actually do an episode on how this was a couple years ago, but it's pretty much the same.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm sure it's all the same pretty much of how like you can actually do a run through. So we're not going to go through all of that step by step here. And we've talked about it, here and there in various episodes. But what you want to do is you want to, before the service starts, and have the run through end like before 5 minutes when everyone's still there, like with plenty of time. You want to run through the service so that you can know how everything's going to go. So the worship, the lights, the production, the sound, all those things. You want to make sure the service is going to go well, not just hope that the service is going to go well. And so what often can happen is maybe you do a sound check and you might do a song and everyone just kind of, especially if it's smaller, it's more easy to be like, well, we just know what's going to happen. And so you don't actually do it. And then you run into a bunch of problems. And this is also important too, that you want to set rhythms and habits for the long term. So if your church was 2, 3 times as big as it is now, would you do a run through differently than you do now? The answer is yes. You should do it now so you can set those rhythms and practices, especially if you're a church plant. I mean, even if it's just you and a worship leader and a screens person, it's still worth doing so that you can do it. And so how we do it is, the band comes, won't go into all the details, but the band comes, they run through songs, sound check, whatever, and then we do a full service run through where they go through the next step person, the lights, they do all the songs. I don't preach my sermon, but I get up there, we make, the live stream camera or whatever, make sure that's set. I'll just talk through my points to make sure the person on the screen can know what's going to happen. Make sure there's no typos on the screen, because that's another thing that's really easily preventable. It's like you put it in, you don't look at it, and then it's bad. And then we do the rest of the songs and we end. And we're always done about 25-ish minutes, 30 minutes ideally before the service actually starts, so people aren't like coming in or waiting in the lobby as we're trying to figure it out.
Listen to the music.
And it makes it way smoother. You know exactly what's going to go. You're not wondering. The sound person's not wondering. The worship band is not wondering what's going to happen. So all these are helpful. This might be literally the most helpful one, is the importance of doing a good run through and not assuming, we know this is going to work. We've done it. We don't do it as much now because like we've kind of built the culture of it. But in the past, we would. I mean, if a light cue was missed really badly, we would say, hey, go back to the end of that song, let's do it again. Not to shame anyone, but if you're going to practice it wrong, you're going to do it wrong, especially if you have people in production that don't have a lot of experience, to let them know this is really important. And so you got to do a service run through.
And this helps people in production that don't have a lot of experience. Like it helps them on their end too. Because I remember like early on, production was the thing that I was most intimidated by. Well, maybe not most. I mean, I was intimidated by preaching. But like production is not something I'd ever had any experience in before. And so coming in and doing it like on a Sunday service was super intimidating. In fact, I remember early days before we launched, we met in your townhome, and I remember one day you asked me if I would run slides for your TV. Like we had like Pro Presenter going to the TV for like the 20 people that were there. And even then, the day before, I was like, I really don't want to screw it up. I've never,
Yeah.
because I'd never done it before. I didn't know all you're doing is pressing space bar. Like I didn't know how it worked. But for an actual Sunday service, it was nerve-wracking because I didn't have any experience in it. And so actually having a run-through helps these people that don't have any experience in this actually figure out what are the common mistakes, what are they going to mess up, and how to fix it, instead of them having to just kind of go by someone's told them what to do. Maybe they've watched a Sunday before, but not actually done it live until people are actually there depending on them. And so this run-through really helps you obviously iron out all those issues, but I think it helps build confidence in your production people as well, especially if they don't have as much experience.
It's interesting in a townhome that you were intimidated by it. It's just good to know because, we're here every Sunday. So it's like, oh yeah, we know. But people who don't have a lot of experience, they don't want to mess up.
Yeah.
And so it can really help them know, okay, even as someone who does it a lot, it's like, it's still good to know, here are the cues, here, how's it going to go, to get some feedback. And so service run-throughs are really important, regardless of, the size of your church. If you're post-launch and you're doing public services, and you're not just meeting in your house.
Yeah.
Like if you're, you should do this. And again, it's not about perfection and all these sort of things, but the more distractions you can eliminate, the better it is.
And I would say for this, you want it to be as close to, how do I put this? You want people to take it as seriously as possible. Like make it as close to what the service is going to be outside of preaching an entire sermon. Because especially as you get into the groove of things, it's really easy for people to miss things because they know run through.
Right.
No one's actually watching, or it's not live. And so it's easy to just kind of, oh yeah, I missed that cube. I'll get it when we're live.
Yep.
But to go back and actually correct these things, because this is how you actually fix issues. And this is how you help people not get in these patterns of making mistakes. And I think especially if you do like announcements or a next steps portion, I think this also helps especially if you have a newer person doing that, so you can tell them, hey, don't just say I'm going to say these things, but talk through exactly what you're going to say. Say it verbatim. And so then you can see like, oh, I didn't realize they were going to try and say this, or they really don't, they really need some more information or need a little bit more hand holding, or maybe they got it and it's going to be great. But it helps them have a little more confidence. But I think it also helps you as service starts not sit there wondering like, is this going to be awkward, or we haven't got this light cue. Is this going to be weird? Where you can just kind of not really think about it and let things go on as planned.
Yeah. So some of these we'll talk about. It is hard in the beginning because you don't want to come across as like the bad guy necessarily. So to say, hey, we missed that. But I mean, if this is important, you can do it in a nice way, but you have to do it because it builds the culture. So like now, we don't really often say, hey, you need to go back, hey, you need to take it seriously, because we know run through is important.
Yeah.
Like we're not trying to correct everything. But in the beginning, we'd have to do that. It's like, oh no, you were talking or whatever. Even if you know you're not going to do it in the service, the worship, or I might be thinking, is this going to work? And so that's why it's important to take it seriously and be willing to say something so that you can set the culture of this matters.
And one last thing on that before we move on, like everything comes down to the expectations you set. So if you tell people as we're doing run through, especially as a new person comes on, that hey, before it even starts, if we miss a cue, it's not a big deal, but we're going to go back and do it again. Mm-hmm. Then they know to expect it. And you tell them this happens with other people. It's not just you. So they're not feeling like, especially as the new person, that they're being singled out. But you can tell them this is the expectation. And so if it happens, it's not a big deal, but we're going to go back and correct it. And they don't feel like they're the ones who are causing the issue because you didn't actually tell them that's what's going to happen.
Yeah. And then the last thing too, with the next steps person or analysis person, this is also really important. We don't people that done it a lot, we don't make them necessarily, they briefly say here are the whatever. We don't make them say exactly what they're going to say.
Yeah.
But if they're newer, we do.
Yeah.
And so that I can say, hey, you should say this or you should think about this, but make them actually say their next steps. And if you have a mix of people and you don't want to be fair or unfair, you could just set the expectation, hey, announce this person, you got to say what you're going to say on there, just so everybody knows what's going on.
Yep,
so,
totally.
Service run through, again, number 30, if you want to go all the way back to there, we give some more details on how we do it.
Yeah, you have to do a lot of scrolling, but it's there.
Number 2, consistent service run through time. So it's not only important to have it, but you have to be set of here's when it's going to start. And this is where it's hard because, again, people might be laughing, have a good time, which is good. Or they might be practicing a song a bunch because they're trying to get it, which is also good. But if you're not set a habit of we start service run through about this time every week, then what will happen is you'll slowly push service run through back, and then you're doing a run through when people are coming, or you don't get to do the full run through, and so it's kind of awkward. I mean, now we've set the culture of I mean, it's all relative to what you're doing, whatever. So if
Yeah.
we have a 10 o'clock service, our run through starts at 8:55. It takes about 30 minutes to get through the whole run through because, we want to make sure I got to talk through my sermon points or if we have to fix a screen or whatever. So, it's not like whatever.
Yeah.
So it takes a little bit of time,
Yeah.
but you have to start at the same time because again, if you start later, then you'll miss stuff. Or we tell people, hey, we start and run through. You got like 3 minutes or whatever. And it's not to be a stickler or anything like that. But if you don't say, hey, we're starting, it won't get. If you wait for everyone to be ready, like that's just no one's ever ready.
Yeah.
And so you've got to set the expectation of here's when production and band arrive and do their sound check or whatever that looks like for you, and here's when services start or run through is starting. It may mean that you don't get to practice a song as much as you want because we've got to do it now. But it may seem obvious, but it has to start on time. And it's going to be hard in the beginning to do it. But again, once you set that expectation, people will just know, oh, yeah, we do run through at this time. And they'll be more willing to start when you say it's time to go.
I think one of the simplest things you can do, but one of the most effective things you can do as like a new leader is always start things when you say that you're going to start things. Always be punctual, but make others be punctual as well. So right now we do it at, I think it's 8:50 or 8:55 that we start our run through. And so like where we are now, I'm not in our production booth very often anymore. Like we were earlier on, we have a team and occasionally I will, but it's mostly just to fill in. And so kind of the way we have things set up is my wife, Brittany's on staff and she has a lot more Sunday morning specific duties than I do. And so I'm usually the one who's in charge of the kids on Sunday, like our kids. And so occasionally if I'm in charge, this is going to happen this Sunday, it's not actually anymore, but if I'm in charge of the kids, I kind of need to know what time do I need to be there to do the things I need to do. I can do everything and our son's fine, but I'm not going to get there an hour early and just have him sit there when I don't actually need to be there.
Yeah.
And so I know our run through, it starts at this time. And so if I'm a part of the service, whether I'm in production or if I'm doing like next steps or something like that, I know if I'm there at this time, that's when we're going to be starting because we're punctual and I'm not going to be late because they said everyone's here, so let's just start early anyways. Or I'm not going to show up and everyone's just goofing off and I'm sitting there wondering why aren't we starting. So be punctual, figure out what time, how much time you need, adjust it if need be. It's not like you can never adjust, but once you have it figured out, make sure you're actually starting at that time because the more you push it back, the more you kind of let things go, the more people are going to know that this actually isn't the time we can start or we actually start. And then they're going to start getting lazy in it as well. It's just kind of a spiral. So figure out what time is going to work and then be punctual and have people be punctual as well.
So what we do, the band goes through some of their songs, sound check stuff to practice them. And then we start on the same time. So sometimes they have a lot of time between when they finish, like 10, 15 minutes. Sometimes they have like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And we say, go to the bathroom, we're starting. And then what Kevin, our worship guy, will do, we use Planning Center. So he'll talk through the service plan.
Yep.
It takes about 5 minutes and then we go and do it. And if not everyone's in the room, like we don't just sit around and wait. We try to tell them, but then we start and, we don't make anyone feel bad when they come and like, oh, whoops, I was wherever I was.
Yeah.
But people get used to knowing this is important. So you need a consistent run through time as well.
And that's a good point. It's a good way just to start run through is you just talk through the service flow. Takes, I don't know, a couple minutes. Like it's generally just one person, Kevin in our situation, but talking through it and it helps everyone kind of get a grasp on what the service is actually going to look like. Yep. But also it's just a good like marker of we're starting instead of like everyone go get in your positions, everyone's kind of like meandering, doing their thing, but it's everyone's coming together. We do it. We put our hands in the middle. We do a cheer, but then everyone goes, and it's a good way to mark this is when it's actually starting instead of just hoping everyone's in position at the right time.
Yep. All right, number 3. This is really a lot easier to implement than the first two if you're not doing it. But
yeah,
I cannot overemphasize how helpful this is. And this is how you're having your sermon slides in ProPresenter or whatever you use before Sunday morning.
Yeah,
they need to be in there. Now, I will die on the hill of if you preach that you should be at least 1 week ahead of sermon prep. I'm not going to get into all that right now. I'm just saying.
Yep,
you should. And one of the ways this is beneficial is come to slides. So for me, again, it doesn't matter, but the week of the sermon's already written. So the first thing I do Monday morning is take my notes, reduce my outline, get it ready, whatever. And then I talk through it Tuesday. And so I have my outline on Google Docs, whatever. I have the points and the things that need to be on the screen. They're highlighted and all that. And then Wednesday, when Kevin's here with the band practice and all that sort of thing, he puts them in ProPresenter, puts all the notes in there. Thursday, I talk through it one final time Thursday morning, and then I, print out my outline, which we'll talk about that in a second. And I also go into ProPresenter, and if there's anything that I change, if there's any words or whatever, I'll, tweak it, or I'll just double check that everything's in there good. And then Sunday morning, when we arrive, everything's fine. Now, maybe Sunday morning or whatever happens and I decide to tweak something, it's way easier on Sunday morning to go in and tweak it than having to put everything in there, especially if you need the computer for other things, or, if you're trying to update the computer when the band needs the lyrics for run through, and it's a lot. And so even if it's Saturday for you, which I think it should be before that, regardless, the sermon slides need to be in there. And if you need to tweak them, that's a lot easier than trying to get them in on Sunday morning. And also, it's one of those things too that like slides are oftentimes can be really ugly, and it only needs a little bit to make them not ugly. Like ours are very basic, but they're good. It's just like a dark gray background with white text, and then whatever, we use printouts for the main points, and so a couple of the words are, I don't know, highlighted basically, essentially a different color, which matches our sermon bumper video, whatever.
Yep.
And like it's not a lot, but it's readable, it's big, there's no typos, because you can read all that stuff. And so sermon slides in whatever presentation software you use before Sunday, so you're not scrambling to get them all in there. Probably gonna have typos. Something might be out of order because you're trying to get it all in there as opposed to just going over it real quick.
The most you can not do, the least you can do, the most you can not do on a Sunday morning, I think the better. Like, and it doesn't matter if you're bivocational, full vocational, whatever. Like, as long as you put it in your schedule and you plan for it, you can do it ahead of time. And so in this case, it's putting sermon slides in, but I think it can come down to anything that you can do before Sunday. Yeah. Like, for example, we do, like you said, we do a printout for message notes. And currently it's myself who prints them. In the past, it was another staff member. And
this is for people to fill in while they're listening to the sermon.
Yeah, they get it at the door. They can fill in notes and stuff like that. And in the past, some people that were on staff were doing it like printing it morning of, and it was fine. Like, it wasn't causing any huge issue. But I remember talking to him saying, why don't you just print it out ahead of time? Because it's not harder to print it out ahead of time, but it's one less thing to worry about Sunday morning when things could go wrong. And so this is just kind of goes into that. Like, yes, you could put them in Sunday morning and potentially everything would be just fine. But it's just one less thing that'll cause you stress, one less opportunity for error if you just do it ahead of time, whether it's a day or earlier in the week, whatever, than saving it till the last minute. So as much as you cannot save till the last minute, moral of the story, don't save till the last minute.
The computer is being used for run through. So how are you going to use it?
That's a good point. So, you have to make everyone wait.
So of course, I mean, this goes for everything. The lyrics are probably put in ahead of time, most likely. But even if there's, you got to double check your announcement slides or whatever. It's really quick. It's a lot easier to just double check or add one thing than trying to put something in there. And so having your sermon slides in the computer before Sunday will be much better.
Helps.
Number 4. This is even easier.
This is.
And a lot of people don't do this. Maybe they just didn't think about it. I don't know, but it's so helpful. And that is to print your sermon notes or your outline or your manuscript, however you do it, whatever you use, for the people in the production booth. So from mine, like I don't use a manuscript or anything like that. So I just print the outline, which has the points in the scripture, and I put it. The screens person gets one, and the live stream person gets one. Now you might think it's not that different because they can just see the points in the scripture on the computer.
Yeah.
But what we know is that people aren't always paying attention to everything. They're just looking at the next thing. And so by having an outline, they might not know the exact wordage I'm going to say, although when we go through run through, I might say, hey, when I say this, just be thinking, and so they can take notes.
Yeah.
But they have it all in front of them. So I think it's one less thing that makes it less intimidating because they can see the flow. Even though they can see it on the screen, I think it just feels different. You don't want to press the wrong button, but it's like, oh, he's right here. He's going to read these scripture next. And he's going to say this point after he explains that scripture. And so, again, if you just use an outline, I mean, if you use a manuscript, that's helpful too. But give it to, your screens person so that they have some more cues about what's going on. Or if you do live stream as well, like if you have a graphic that needs to be put up or something at some point, you should print it out and tell the live stream person, hey, make sure you put this on here, especially for them because they don't see the computer. Like they don't see the ProPresenter stuff.
Yeah.
But it's just such an easy thing. Like for example, when if I'll speak somewhere else, like at Crew, at NC State here last semester or this Thursday, like I bring my note, I bring an outline to the person, which I bet most people don't do, but it's like, in situations like that, sometimes would rather not have anything on the screen.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm like, if you do it wrong or put it up wrong, like it's just really distracting.
Yeah.
But I give them the outline. I just talk through it really briefly. And then last time I was at Crew, it's a bunch of college students, so you never know if are they paying attention. There was never a problem, because maybe they know what they're doing, but also oh, here's exactly what he's going to say.
Yeah.
And so print your notes for whoever is necessary. Definitely the screens person if you do live stream as well. Probably not super necessary for the sound because you're just talking, but print your notes, give it to them, and that can be really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, we all want or hope everyone is just 100% focused 100% of the time, and we encourage our guys or our people back there, like, don't be on your phone and stuff like that. But it's just easy when you're looking at a screen and looking back between a screen and a person to lose your place, to lose focus at times. And having the notes there helps you follow along, helps you know where you are. Especially if if you have kind of longer stories, or if you have kind of more time in between your points or things like that, it can be really easy. And I've done this before to start thinking, did I miss it? Like it's been a while between this and the next thing. Am I behind, or did he say this and I just missed it because I zoned out for a minute? But having the notes there, then you can see, like, no, this is what's coming next. Or after this next point that I wonder if I missed, he's talking about this thing, which I know he hasn't gotten to yet. So he's probably still back here. It just really helps him follow along. And, I think like one of the most frustrating things when you're preaching is, especially if you're relying on it, is having a screens person that's missing, or like that doesn't put something up and you're like trying to hint at it without calling them out. But this is, if you don't give them anything to go on, then honestly, it's kind of on you. It's kind of on you if they miss it, because we want them to be 100% all the time, but it's hard when you don't know where the person's going in their message, and you can't really expect them to just read ahead and pro presenter all the way to the bottom to know what's going to happen. And so if you've done a run through, if they have the notes in front of them, then you've kind of done all the things that you can do to help them along the way, and then it is a little bit on them at that point. So,
but print your notes for the screens person. It'll be really helpful.
It helps.
Number 5, this is also a not too difficult thing to do, and also does more than you might think initially to help your service flow. So, screens being all over the place can be really distracting, and if you're trying to preach, it can be distracting to you because it's like, I'm not saying that. Why is that up there? We've talked about this before, but having a countdown video before your service starts. So like everyone else, we have music playing, and then we have, our pre-post slides that go on the screens, but then 2 minutes before service. Pro tip, actually 1 minute before service, we start on time. This is not a thing on here. This is free. You need to start on time every week. So if we have a service at 10 o'clock, for example, we start at 10:01. Gives us an extra 60 seconds, and people still think it starts at 10.
That's right.
But at 2 minutes before, the music goes off of Spotify to to this 2 minute countdown where it's 2 minutes in the center of the screen and a bunch of pictures from New City from various things we've done. Just like going over the screen, and Brian updates his pictures every once in a while. And so we've updated the pictures, but the 2 minute sound, I don't know.
The music
has been the same.
Same for 4 years.
For 4 years. It never changes. And I always joke, but it's literally Pavlov's dog.
100%.
Hearing the bell. And so people in the lobby, as soon as everyone complains about no one being in the service when it starts. Now, you can't make people be at your church, but a lot of times people are outside. And everyone hears this, and they just go into the auditorium. It's also really helpful for the band. The production already has to be in there because we do a 5-minute thing on the bottom of this, whatever. They're already in there, but like the band, there's never like, where's the band? Because they hear it. Like, I got to get on stage and get ready. And so a 2 minute is what we do. Change the music. It's just an instrumental. It's not like a worship song. And it's always the same. When people hear it, it's just like a herd of cats. Everyone just goes in.
And cats. What a weird animal.
A herd of cats.
A herd of cats?
A herd of cats.
Cow? Or I don't know. Sheep?
Well, maybe herding cats is like something that's hard to do.
That's what I mean. So this is the opposite.
Well, no, because it's hard to get people on time.
Oh, yeah.
So we're
solving the problem.
We are solving the problem.
How to herd cats.
We are herding cats. We're doing the impossible. But it really gets everyone who is in there. And again, it's not about trying to get everyone in there to say, hey, the service is full, but it's less distracting. The band is practiced. If you start with songs, or if you start with announcements, then you want people to know what's going on. Like, it's not that you don't want people to hang out and talk, but you want people to get in there. And so it's a nice way too, without saying, hey, service is starting, which is kind of rude. But a countdown video, start at 2 minutes before your service starts. We would recommend putting some pictures up. If you don't have pictures yet, you could just do the music, change the music, and people will slowly listen or hear it. But the pictures are really nice because, especially if you're new, you're probably there a little early, and it's like, you get to know the church a little bit and see some people. So a 2 minute countdown video with music is really helpful.
And here's how you do it. So if you are like a one-man show or whatever and don't want to figure out how to edit videos, there's a website called churchmediadrop.com. and they have a bunch of countdowns, and it's just 2-minute countdown. I mean, you can go on YouTube and like steal one, but they have just a bunch of like
Is
generic.
it free or you got to pay? Or?
Free. Everything on there's free. They have a bunch of bumper videos and stuff too. It's a good site.
Church Media Drop.
Churchmediadrop.com.
Okay.
And like different churches upload to it, so like obviously there's varying quality. You find something you like, but they have countdowns that I've seen that I haven't used because we've done this forever. So I'm not sure if they have music behind them. They might not, but if they don't, then drop it in iMovie or something and add music behind it. For music, we use soundstripe.com, which does cost $15 a month.
This is important though for the live stream.
That's exactly what I was about to say. If you're thinking like, I'll just put my favorite worship song behind it and it's the same song every week. If you live stream, your live stream will get taken down before you even start. So it's all royalty free on Soundstripe. So that's where we got it. We just found one that we liked that was like upbeat because we want people to like start in a kind of more upbeat manner instead of like walking into a funeral. And so it's we just found one that we liked. And I mean, if you email us, I have it somewhere. I can tell you what the name of it is and you go download it yourself. So but then once you if you want to add a little bit more to it, then you can start putting like a slideshow there, or even slideshow with like transitions and stuff, and to make it a little more engaging. But it's a super easy thing to do. Yep. And so even if you feel like it's above your pay grade, it's not. And it's super simple, and you can even find ones for free.
Yep. And it makes such a big difference. And if you have pictures of gatherings, services, whatever, definitely use them.
Yep.
Don't use vertical pictures.
Yes, have them all be the same.
Yeah. On your
orientation.
But if you don't, you can just use normal announcement slides in the meantime. But it is crazy how effective it is. I mean, everybody, even though it's like 2 minutes long, as soon as they hear it, there's like, oh, let's all go inside.
Yeah. It makes it so much easier if you're a part of the service. Like if you're in the band, or if you're doing announcements or next steps and you're the first thing that's going to be up there, like, when this hits 0, service is starting. It is not like everyone looking at their watch or once the light comes up or whatever, or you're not deciding yourself. It's like 0 at ours. At the end of 0, it goes to our logo. So our logo starts on the screen in case the slides person isn't quick to change to the next thing. That way it's not just black.
Yeah.
But it gives everyone a cue of this is when it's starting. And if someone's late coming in, then that's fine. But at least they knew. They're not surprised that, oh, service is starting, I got to run in there. They know that what's going on.
And this is helpful for all church sizes. I mean, we will always do this.
Oh, 100%.
But technically, if you're a smaller church, a new church, or a church plant, and it's kind of one of those awkward, like, all right, come on, guys, let's all go in there.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to do that. People just know.
Yep.
So service countdown, 2 minutes, what we recommend, be really helpful.
Yes.
Number 6, a confidence monitor with a timer. So a confidence monitor it's a way for the people on stage to see, I don't know, maybe Brian can explain this better than I can, but you can see what's being shown on the screens, and you can set it up to a way where you also can see the text for the next slide.
Yes.
So how we have it set up on the back of our auditorium, we actually have 2 screens. You can explain how it works in ProVersion or whatever. We have the main confidence monitor, which doesn't show graphics or anything. It just shows the text that's on the current slide. And then below it in like yellow, it shows you the text on the next slide. And then to the right of that, also on the back wall, we have a screen that shows what's on our main screens.
Yes.
Just so the person on stage can see it if they want to, or if there's a video or the bumper video, like where it is without having to turn around and, try to find it. And it's really helpful for worship, number 1, because that can help reduce music stands, at least for the worship leaders, if that's a thing, that they can know. You don't want people staring at it, obviously, but they can know exactly it's called a confidence monitor because you have confidence.
Yep.
So you know what's coming up. And typically, depending on where it is, it also can allow you to instead of looking down, to look up or look out in some direction. And it's also really helpful depending on how you do your sermons. It's really helpful for me or if you just want to rely less or look down less. For me, I in my Bible, I have the only notes I take with me are notes about the passage. And I am, like Brian mentioned earlier, very reliant on the screens person, which is why we do run through and I print out my thing, because it says what's on the current slide, and then it says what's going to be up on the next slide. And so if they're not following along, I can try to guess, but I don't always know.
Yeah.
I need those little reminders. So it's helpful. It's a way of having an outline. If you're someone who preaches with an outline, this transition will be really simple for you. It's a way to have an outline without actually having the outline.
Yep.
And also not relying on it. You have to the way we have it set up is it's a little bit above everybody, but I'm still looking straight, and it's actually right above our live stream camera. So if you're watching a live stream, it kind of makes it look like I'm just looking at the live stream camera
yeah.
instead of looking up. But it helps me as well, knowing what's the next point, or am I going back into scripture next is on there. But also, what's helpful is on the top left of it, and I think you can arrange in ProPresenter where it's all set.
I think so, yeah.
But it has a timer, so for me, it has 30 minutes. So I'll typically preach 30 to 35 minutes, but it's got a 30-minute timer, and it's counting down, and then when you get to 0, it goes red and it goes like into negatives, which is really important because, without it, there's been a lot of times, before we used it where I looked at my watch and it's like, okay, this is what time it is. Here's how long 30 minutes will be. And as I'm talking, trying to look down and see.
Trying to calculate.
Yeah. But that is just really, really obvious and really, really helpful. So a confidence monitor of some kind helps you smoother services.
It does. Hopefully a confidence monitor isn't unheard of. I feel like it's probably pretty known to most people, but having the timer I think really helps. I remember a couple times preaching earlier on where the timer back in our old space, there was a time where we had some issue with it. I can't remember if we just didn't have it or if it didn't work properly, or maybe I just couldn't remember what time it started.
Not on ProPresenter.
On the confidence monitor? What do you mean?
Well, we had at one point we bought a clock and we put it on the sound booth and faced the stage. You're not talking about that. You're talking about.
I don't even remember that.
Yeah, it wasn't a countdown timer. It was just here's what time it is.
Oh, wow.
So I tried to use that to gauge.
But regardless, maybe the issue was I couldn't remember if it was 30 minutes or 35 minutes, whatever. And so, but moral of the story is I had to rely on what time it was.
Yeah.
And to try and not go over, but also, especially at the time being newer to preaching, also try and not make this like a 15-minute service or 15-minute sermon. And so I remember a couple times it really messed me up. It made me get in my head too much to where I couldn't focus on what I was trying to preach because I was trying to make sure that my time was good. Where we have it now, where we've had it for a long time, is it's just counting down from 30 minutes. And I know if it says 15 minutes, that means I've gone for 15 minutes. And we have the timer start with the first slide of the sermon, which is always our graphic for the
right after the bumper video ends.
After the bumper video. And so you're not it's also not the entire service, so you're not trying to figure out what time you went up or anything like that. But if you're used to using that, or if you can get used to using that, it just makes it a lot simpler for you and makes it just kind of one less thing to worry about, actually knowing how much time you've been up there.
And again, this is why we highly recommend ProPresenter.
Yes.
It's a one-time fee. It's not a monthly subscription, but I don't know how you would do it without it, because what we mean by confidence monitors, we don't mean a screen that shows you what's on the current screen. Because that's not helpful. You need to know what's coming up next for your band or if you'd use it for preaching. And so I don't know how it works, but in ProPresenter, it's pretty easy to select what goes onto what screen, and you can use. And if you only have one TV, use the confidence monitor section, not what's on the main screens, because it doesn't really matter what's on the main screens. It's really just to help you. And so that'll make everything go smoother. Highly recommend.
Yep. And you can, if you use ProPresenter for anything, if you have one TV, you can use it. It may cost a few bucks, but you can hook up a second. We have, how many? We have 4, 5 something TVs right now hooked up for various things, or even more because we have them out here too. But even in our old space, where you can always hook up more TVs, and you can get TVs for cheap, or you can ask people to donate, whatever. You can figure it out. But there's always a solution to it. So if you're thinking in your space, you don't know how it would work, you may need to get someone, a volunteer, or whatever, who's a little more technical than you to help figure it out. But there is always a solution.
Or you can go to YouTube, go to Practical Church Planning, hit subscribe, and then search Confidence Monitor ProPresenter, and they'll tell you how to do it.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So,
yeah.
You like that little subscribe.
You can make it work.
What I did there.
That's right. I caught that.
Yeah. So even if you don't know it, I'm sure it could tell you in 5 minutes. Here's how to set it up.
Oh yeah.
So, Confidence Monitor is really helpful. And then last but not least, number 7, give constructive but honest feedback to your production volunteers. So it can't just be, oh, that was awkward. Hopefully it's better next week.
Yeah.
Because it will not get better next week. This is where it can be. This is where also the run through is really helpful, especially if you mention, hey, if we miss it, especially if they're newer back there, just so you know, we'll stop. This is what we do. Yeah. And it's not against you, it's to help. But one of the things that will always be a problem, it seems, is worship slides not being fast enough.
Yeah.
Because people, a lot of churches do this. If I were you, I would check on how it does it for your church on Sunday, and it's probably too slow. By too slow, I mean people always read ahead. And so the natural tendency, if you're doing slides for worship, is to leave the current slide up until the last word is sung.
Yep.
And then you're delayed going to the next slide because people are like, what's the next word? Particularly if it's a fast song. Yeah. Or even if it's a slow song and there's a few seconds before the next word and they still leave it on the... people don't need... I, it is always better to go way too fast
Oh yeah.
than too slow.
Oh yeah.
And so before the first or second to last word is sung, you should go to the next slide. And so this is something we've constantly having to tell people.
Yep.
And it's not as bad as it could be.
Yeah.
And honestly, maybe the average person doesn't think too much about it, but we're just really cognizant of, like, if you're new and you don't know the song, like, it's just, you don't want to you don't want to sound like you're out of place or whatever. So
Yeah.
you really need that. And so whether it's that or, when you're preaching and you've noticed, this was an issue, it's one thing if someone's done it a lot where it's like, oh, that was clearly like they know. But if it's someone who's new after service, I will say, I always thank them for what they've done, whatever, good job. And here's one thing to think about.
Yeah.
Because again, it's really hard if you don't trust the person back there. It's distracting for you or the worship leader or whoever is on stage. Even if you're not dependent on the slides, you just know that people will be distracted if they're off. And so giving honest feedback to production people is really important.
Yeah, hopefully you don't have people that are serving every single week. And so the tough thing with this is it comes when you have someone serve once a month and they struggle with something and maybe you told them, but it's a month until they serve again.
Yeah.
And they've forgotten what you've told them, which no fault of their own. I mean, it's not like this is their full-time job or anything. And so being honest, constructive, but also honest during run through will really help iron out these issues. Cause we try not to judge people, whatever, but we've always had people throughout the years that you kind of know this person's going to need to be reminded to go a little faster.
Yeah.
This person's going to need to be reminded to stay focused, that kind of thing, which no fault of their own. It's just that kind of thing. But if you just tell them maybe at the end of service and then forget about it, there's no universe where they're going to remember in a month from now what word I'm supposed to change to on ProPresenter when they've done this once before, And so being honest with your feedback, it doesn't help if you just don't say anything, but being constructive, obviously you need to point out the good things they do as well, not just point out all the negative, but being honest with them and actually showing them this is how you get better will help people get better, and actually doing it day of instead of, in the future, or having your production person email them the next day or something along those lines, telling them in the moment right then what they can do to improve in a constructive way will help them. And everyone wants to get better. No one wants to be the person that's dragging it down.
Yep.
And so this isn't a bad thing, but be honest with people and tell them this is how we can improve.
Yeah. So those are 7 tips. Hopefully that's not too overwhelming. But again, if you're every weekend's coming up and it's like, I have no idea how this service is going to go.
Yeah.
Here are some practical things to do. You don't need to do them all, but like what you could do, what I would recommend you do is write this list down and do one at a time. This week, print your sermon notes.
Yeah.
That's if you're preaching, or ask your pastor guy, whoever is preaching, to print them. They'll be fine to do it. And then also you can work on a 2-minute countdown video. And then next week, introduce the video.
Yeah.
And you don't have to tell people. I mean, just start bluing it. People will catch on.
Yeah. People will understand what it's coming down to.
And guy confidence monitor, set that up. All these sort of things. Yeah. It just makes it a lot smoother. And we're always more cognizant of it if there's a new person there that, like, a friend that we know has come for the first time.
Yes.
Like, that's when you're really praying, oh, please, everything work. But there's a good chance that every week you have a chance of somebody's first time, and maybe someone who's been prayed for a long time finally decided to show up for whatever reason. And so you want to do whatever you can to, as if it was one of your really close friends who doesn't know Jesus yet was there.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. And I'll add a 7.5. This is because you mentioned it, but if you just want like a super stupid practical way to do it, when we were talking about worship slides going fast enough, it's very easy to, if you don't give people like the exact thing to do, it's very easy for them to leave it to their own interpretation. So when I'm showing someone back there, or if someone's new back there and I just happen to be around, unless you know that they're good, I tell every single person, change it before we sing the last word.
Yep.
It's just between the second to last word and the last word. Hit it right then. I don't care what the song is. And there's some that there's going to be a break right there, and maybe that'll be a little bit awkward. But I'd rather that little break be a little bit awkward than people not be able to sing.
Yep.
So as people, obviously, as they get more comfortable, they can, especially as they know a song, they can maybe judge a little bit better. But especially as you're newer and getting new people on, just tell them exactly what to do. Don't leave anything up to their judgment. Just say, change it right then. And everyone will appreciate it. Nobody wants to be the one to mess it up. And so just tell them, this is when I want it changed. Change it. And then remind them and run through. And then remind them before service starts, whatever. Make it super stupidly simple. And this is how you get a smooth service.
Yeah. And with the lyrics too, what's hard is the person on ProPresenter can see the next slide.
Yeah.
And so it's really easy for them to, consciously, unconsciously, well, I know it's coming up, but no one else can see the next slide. Yep. And so you want to tell them. So
exactly.
Those are 7 tips. Hopefully really helpful. If you want some more tips, again, practicalplanting.com is our website. Got a lot of free resources. We have our Growing Your Launch Team course, which, people in our Facebook group, which you can also join. have asked about different things that are helpful, and I always be like, you could try this out. And other people are like, it was really helpful. So don't just take it from me. Take it from the feedback in the group.
Yep.
That's practicalplanting.com/launch if you're launching in the next year or so and you want some practical tips. Again, Practical Church Planting on Facebook. Join the group. There's over 1,500 people a part of it now, and we're on YouTube as well. You can subscribe there. So thanks for listening. We'll be with you next week on Practical Church Planting.